Good evening, gang. Let's see, is this working? Yeah, looks like it. So, I wanted to go through an idea with you. Alec, by the way, you Mad Sinus Club dude, and working with a whole bunch of different groups. And it's been a while since I did a video. I had a nice weekend off. Sorry for the poor light, but I'm trying to show you what's on screen here. Something I wanted to cover is a lot of people ask me on an almost daily basis, what kind of MIDI controller should I get? This is one of the first ones I got. This is the first one, MC6 Mark II Morningstar. These are brilliant. But one is never enough, believe it or not. Two devices. And you think about it, all the stuff that we're using in the Line 6 MIDI Mad Sinus Club, they are all sort of MIDI controllers. The Stomp has not been for a long time, but that is likely to change soon with 3 coming out. So, big question I think most people are going to start asking is, well, what happens with my MC6, or what happens with all these other controllers that I've gotten? And here's the big thing. The MC6 has both in and out. And a good way to think about this, and we cover this in a lot of discussions, is you've got 6 commands here. And I've set this up to double click, it switches over to the first 6. So you've got A, B, C, D, E, F. You've also got D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L on the second page. And there's a command called toggle page, which you can actually send remotely to this. So you can go through any one of the 30 banks of 6, and then there's another 30 bank of 6 over here, which you can access directly by another MIDI controller like that, or you can stick actual physical switches off to the side. You can also use expression pedals. So that starts to get a bit big, doesn't it? And because this has a little scribble strip on it, it's extremely useful. So what I've been doing in my time off is working out, well, what could one actually do using 2 or 3 or 4 MIDI controllers? And a MIDI controller doesn't have to be a physical thing. This is my on song, which you've probably seen, and this is a MIDI controller. Selecting these things will go out and select presets on my Stomp. It will also turn on or off the Iridium if it needs to be on or off. It will also turn on and off the plethora here, which is kind of dangling there. I'll show you what's on the desk. So what I did basically was, in order to have something mobile, I've got a floor here down on the floor, which I've recently upgraded. It was an LT before, but scroll strips are super useful. A lot of people are right now looking at lightening the load, getting smaller stuff. And what you're going to generally find is, by the time you go out and get all this stuff, you've probably spent as much as a floor anyway, and you have somewhat less power, you could almost say, but not really. It's an interesting thing. I've actually seen a few videos of different people who are doing this all over the world, so it's not just me. It's your different boxes will do different things. And having multiple MIDI controllers in this case kind of makes a lot of sense. One of the main things which the big old floor does, you can go into edit mode, jump on any one of these different things, like any of these blocks you can pick up, and you can run through that and set things up in the edit mode all by foot. Now, how's that? Say you're doing this, if you're using the edit mode, which I would strongly suggest you do. Steve Sterlacci did a really good video on it, which is, hit and hold down the edit thing and go to town on your LT or your floor, and you'll see you can get a lot of control to dial stuff in. It's a bit back and forth and iffy as to learning your way around, but it's everything at your feet. I would imagine when you're rehearsing, this is not something that you would go into, but if you're doing any kind of sound creation, if you're at home doing this stuff, it's really fast, faster than stopping, picking up the mouse, going into HX Edit, bringing up the preset, opening stuff. The more you get used to it, the better it is. And that idea translates extremely well to something that size. As you now know, there's the MC8 that's out, there's the MC3 that's out. The MC3 would have about the same power as the MC6, but it's a lot smaller screens, so you have to do a lot more navigating around. So for me, this is the main one that I'm always recommending, but it should be noted, and if you're following the channel, here's what's coming up. I'm going to do a lot of interaction between multiple MIDI controllers. So if you've already gone out, say, and bought one, and you're not sure it was the right one, and you're thinking maybe I should sell it, or maybe not, or who knows, here's my advice to you. Hold on to your gear. Seriously. Hold on to it. Wait in this period of time where the entire music market is changing rapidly. And I think you will find, certainly I've found this of late, that you can reimagine the way all these things interact. Would highly recommend an MC6, like you said. But there's a bunch of other stuff coming out on the market. I'm regularly in touch with people from all over the world, and some of them are going to be sending me new stuff, which I will test out and try for you. And that's the big thing. There's no right or wrong with MIDI. So if you're curious about this, if you're worried about it, if you're thinking, well, what am I going to do with this thing eventually? You can, very easily in fact, combine a 6 and a 3. That's a MIDI controller as well. That's a 6-button MIDI controller. That's a 4-button MIDI controller. If you're doing complicated stuff like looping, if you're doing really complicated stuff like editing foot switches on the fly, you kind of need more than 2. And why is that such a big deal and such a cool thing? Well, especially with the MC6, because you can control with your expression pedals up to 16 different messages at once. That means you can be twisting dials on your gear. Twist, 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 twist. You can seriously dial in an amp or a reverb or a delay or whatever. Anything with a whole bunch of different knobs and twiddly bits and twisty things, you can get to the sound you want whilst you're playing. And if you don't really dig what's there, you're not stopping and breaking your rhythm and breaking your practice time up. You're kind of sliding between various states of sound. And that's really amazing. I've had the whole last week I've been messing with this stuff big time. And it's just, wow. You can, the plethora is kind of the key to that. Is they've leapfrogged over everything else. The Helix would do that. Other stuff would do that, where you could set an expression pedal to go from one point to another. You check out the Iridium. There's a couple of really good vids where they've done that, where they've slid from one amp setting to another amp setting with an expression pedal. If you're using an MC6, you can do that with everything. And this gives you much more tone to mess with. You know, you can kind of ride a line, or the way I like to think of it is if you're out hiking. I'm like a big hiking fan. You can tell by the belly, but say you're hiking, you set up waypoints coming down a hill. Some of them could be interesting. You could have a waterfall here, or you could have the fastest path down, and you're going to miss all the good stuff in the middle. Think of the use of expression pedals and the use of manipulation of all of your little CCs, twisting the knobs, as it were. If you're twisting 6 knobs at once, you're, one, avoiding changing presets, and so you're avoiding gaps in your sound. You can slide between states in a very orchestrated way, and it depends on, you know, how much time you put into it. But in terms of overall saving of time, in terms of not interacting with the user interfaces on all this stuff, no more menu diving, none of this nonsense. Define very vaguely how the things you want on those pedals to adjust, map them all, and from there on out, you're floating through different sounds in a really cool way. So that's the advice for today. You can expect a lot more of this stuff coming up in the next couple of weeks. I'm actually running through the vast majority of the things in the Helix and mapping them, and I will save them into presets, and you can copy those, paste them into your own, and because they're pre-mapped, half the work is already done. You can do the rest, and you can reuse the same CCs over and over and over again, just rename them differently in your MC6. With that, it's pretty stunning, but you can really extend something like an HXSTOMP or even an HX Effect, which already has 6 buttons and kind of does it. You can really extend these things out. So beyond the basics of loopers, which require a vast number of switches, manipulations of this type where you're switching the screen on the MC6 to be doing exactly what you want when you're in that moment. Say you're going through an acoustic set, say you're using a Variax, say you're using a Sim1, and you're changing the source of your sounds, you're changing the pickups all the time. Everything is going to behave differently, and to get to the sweet spot of each amp as you're changing guitars, that takes a lot of dialing in. Think about it. If you have all that stuff ready to hand, and you can flick through it just by hitting a button and moving in the expression pedal, a lot of power, and you can now do all that wirelessly, so why not? Happy Monday, folks. Out of here, and thank you to all of those who have subscribed. If you haven't yet, hit the subscription button, help me get up to the magical number of 1,000 where I can be streaming answers directly instead of doing all this recording and editing and nonsense. It would be much appreciated. I'll check you later.